Hello and welcome you all in the class of physiology. Today I will explain you in this video recording about the cardiac cycle in case of human beings. Okay, cardiac cycles are nothing but the repeated events which takes place in the heart of human beings are nothing but the cardiac cycles. Okay. So as we are already known that now the heart of human beings, they are continuously undergoes the beating, and repeated beating of the heart takes place in case of the human beings. The beating time which takes place from one heartbeat to the another heartbeat is known as the cardiac cycle. And for your kind of information, in case of the human being, in a minute the heart of human beings get beaten near about 75 times, so that within 1 minute they undergoes the beating is about 75 times, so that for a one beat it will require the 0.8 second. It will require the 0.8 second. Okay. Now in the heart of human being there is a contraction and relaxation of the auricles and ventricles are repeatedly takes place. Okay. Now the contraction of the heart are known as the systole, and relaxation of the heart is known as the diastole. Okay, there are four events: auricular systole, ventricular systole, auricular diastole, and the ventricular diastoles. Okay, now there is a repetition, contraction followed by the relaxation is repeatedly occurred in the heart of human beings. Okay, so this cyclic repetition is nothing but the cardiac cycle. Cyclic repetitions are nothing but the cardiac cycle, and cardiac cycle in case of the human beings completed within 0.8 seconds. Within 0.8 seconds. So objective of these presentation is to study about the phases of cardiac cycle, events during the cardiac cycle, duration of each phases, then the applied physiology. The heart as a pumping organ which is having the ability to transport the blood with the help of the blood capillaries. Okay. So in case of the heart there is having the two separate pumps in a series. They are nothing but the systole. Systoles are nothing but the contraction of the heart. Diastoles are nothing but the relaxation of the heart. Cardiac cycles are nothing but the both electrical and mechanical events from beginning of the one heartbeat to the beginning of the next heartbeat. Okay, beginning of the one heartbeat to the beginning of the next heartbeat are nothing but the cardiac cycles. Now the heart work as a pumping station of the circulatory system which circulate the blood of the body. The contraction of the heart is called as the systole, and the relaxation of the heart is known as the diastole. Systole always followed by the diastole. This is called a beating of the heart. Each heartbeat therefore consists of the systole and the diastoles. The cyclic repetition of the various changes in the heart from one beat to the another beat is called as the cardiac cycle. The heartbeat is about 75 times per minute. Therefore, one cardiac cycle complete 0.8 seconds. Okay, here in these diagrammatic representations we are clearly understood what is meant by the cardiac cycles. We are already known that the cardiac cycle completed within a 0.8 seconds, and we are already known that the cardiac the cycles having the two sets of the pumping, that is the systole and the diastoles. Okay, that is the auricular systole followed by the auricular diastole. Ventricular systole get followed by the ventricular diastole. Now the auricular systole get completed within a 0.1 seconds. Okay, and the ventricular systole get completed within 0.3 seconds. Okay, so auricular systole and the ventricular systole, they are not takes place simultaneously because of the impulses they are generated from the SA node which is present in the right atrium, and it will require the certain times. Therefore ventricular systole and the auricular systole, they are not takes place simultaneously. Okay, auricular systole require the 0.1 seconds, whereas the ventricular systole require the 0.3 seconds. Okay, then the auricular systole get followed by the auricular diastole, and it will require near about the 0.7 seconds. Okay, and the ventricular diastoles require 0.5 seconds. Okay, ventricular systole, the diastole require the 0.5 seconds. Okay, so there are the four sounds which is produced while during the beating of the heart. They are nothing but the first sound, second sound, third sound, and the fourth sound which is produced while during the beating of the heart. Okay, so here is the diagrammatic presentation of the cardiac cycle which is takes place during the beating of the heart. It means that the every waves of the cardiac cycle is repeated and intervals of the 0.8 second. In the cardiac cycle there are four mini events. They are nothing but the auricular systole followed by the auricular diastole, ventricular systole followed by the ventricular diastole. These are the four major events which is takes place while during the cardiac cycles. And we are already known that the auricular systole required 0.1 second, auricular diastole required the 0.7 seconds, then ventricular systole required the 0.3 seconds, and the auricular diastole required the 0.5 seconds. Okay, so auricular systole lasts for 0.1 second while the auricular diastoles last for the 0.7 second. Similarly, the ventricular systole lasts for the 0.1 seconds and the ventricular diastole lasts for the 0.5 seconds. Auricular systoles and the diastoles are the which is important events which is takes place in the cardiac cycle. Cardiac cycle begins in the auricles because same, that is the sino-auricular node or the SA node is present in the right atrium. Okay, so the auricular systole begins when both the auricles are full of the blood, as we are already known that the right atrium and the left atrium receive the blood from the different parts of the body. Right atrium receives the deoxygenated blood with the help of the superior and inferior vena cava. Okay, and the left atrium or the auricles receive the oxygenated blood from the lungs with the help of the pulmonary veins. Okay, then when both auricles get full of blood, at that time they are undergoes the contraction. At the contraction started from the right atrium because there is having the SA node. Okay, a wave of the contraction is generated at the semilunar node, that is sino-auricular node, which spread to all parts of the auricles. Both the auricles contract simultaneously. Both, that is the right and left auricles, are contracted simultaneously and force of the blood into the respective ventricles. Okay, after the auricular systole and ventricular systole begins. After the auricular systole and the ventricular systole begins. Okay, that is the after the auricular systole, ventricular systole get begin. The ventricular systole begin at the end of the auricular systole. Auricles and ventricles never contract simultaneously. The reason for this time is required reaching the impulse from the sino-auricular node to the auriculo-ventricular node. At the onset of the ventricular contraction, the auriculo-ventricular valves close. The sudden closure of a valve produces first heart sound. The sudden closure of the AV valves, auriculo-ventricular valves, produce the first heart sound. No blood passes out the ventricles and no cardiac muscle takes place. This is called as the isometric contraction period. Ventricular diastole. Due to the relaxation of the ventricle, the intraventricular pressure gradually falls. The blood from the aorta and the pulmonary arteries tries to come back in respective ventricle through the open semilunar valves. The flow of the blood is prevented sharp semilunar valve, causing the second sounds. As we are already known that here the that is the due to the relaxations of the ventricle, the intraventricular pressure gradually falls. The blood from the aorta and the pulmonary arteries tries to come back in respective ventricle, that is the right ventricles and the left ventricle, but there is having the particular type of the valves. They are known as the semilunar valve. Then the valve they are undergoes the sharp closing. Okay, so that the second sound will be produced here. When the semilunar valves get closed to ventricles are closed, chamber because the auriculoventricular valves are also closed. Okay, here is the diagrammatic presentation as I already explained you about this. That is the complete cardiac cycle which is takes place within a 0.8 seconds. Okay, among them 0.1 second required for the auricular systole, then 0.3 seconds required for the ventricular systole, then 0.7 seconds will be required for the auricular diastoles, and 0.5 seconds will be required for the ventricular diastoles. Okay, so normal heartbeat which is takes place 75 times per minute, so the duration of one beat is about 0.8 seconds. Okay, now the within the that is the after the 0.1 second the second beats will be occurred, and these are nothing but the cardiac cycle. Now the phases of the cardiac cycle, I already told you about the phases of the cardiac cycle. There are the 4 phases of the cardiac cycles. They are nothing but the auricular systole, auricular diastole, ventricular systole, and the ventricular diastoles. Okay, or atrial systole takes place within a 0.1 second, atrial diastole takes place within 0.7 second, ventricular systole takes place within 0.3 second, ventricular diastole takes place within the 0.5 seconds. Okay, atrial systole, they are the coincident with the last rapid filling phase of the ventricles. Okay, coincident, that is the last filling phase. Atrial systoles are the coincide with the last rapid filling phase of the ventricles. They before these walls are open, ventricle relax with already 75% blood. Contraction add only remaining 25% of the blood in case of the atrium, that is the auricles, as we are already known that from the that is the anterior and posterior most part of the body, the superior and inferior vena cava collect the blood and poured into the right atrium, and from the that is the lungs, from the lungs there is a collecting the oxygenated blood and poured into the left atrium, and from the right atrium and the left atrium the blood they are enters into the right ventricles and the left ventricles with the help of the respective auricles. Okay, here we are already known that there is a having the walls in between the right atrium and the right ventricle. There is having the tricuspid walls, and in between the that is the left auricles and the left ventricle there is having the bicuspid walls. Okay, these walls are having the ability to prevent the backflow of the blood, prevent the black flow of the blood. So here from the right atrium the blood enter into the pulmonary aorta. Okay, and from the that is the left ventricles the blood enter into systematic aorta, and these aorta they are having the that is the semilunar valves. They are having the semilunar valves. The semilunar valves also having the ability to inhibit the backflow of the blood, that is from the dorsal aorta and from the systematic aorta. Okay, so these kinds of the events which is takes place in case of the now ventricular systole and the most of the ventricular diastoles, they are that is the having the ability to gradual filling of the atria, pressure slowly increased. Okay, now the ventricular systoles they are completed within 0.3 seconds. Okay, phase of the isovolumetric that is the volumic phase of isovolumic, that is the isometric contraction of the ventricle is about the 0.3 second. Phase of the ventricular ejection is a rapid phase and slow phase. Rapid phase and the slow phase, these are the two phases of the ventricular ejection is occurred in case of the ventricles. Okay, now here in this case we are already understood that how the that is the blood they are collected from the different parts of the body with the help of the superior vena cava, and the that is the right left auricles collected blood for oxygenated blood from the lungs, and they are get opens simultaneously into the respective ventricles, and from the ventricle the blood enter into the that is from the right ventricle the blood enters into the that is the pulmonary aorta, and from the left ventricle the blood they are entered into the systematic aorta. Okay, so in this way the blood they are transported or pumped by the heart. Okay, this pumping of the heart is nothing but the contraction and the relaxation. Now the phase of the isometric contraction is about 0.50 second in case of the ventricles. Okay, when intraventricular pressure 0.05 second will be required for the reaching the that is the impulses from the SA nodes to the auriculoventricular nodes. Okay, and it will require this period is known as the phase of the isovolumic or the isometric contraction. When intraventricular pressure rises, closed AV valves, seminal valves not yet open, so contract as closed chambers. No change in the volume, so called the isovolumic contraction. Sharp rise in the intraventricular pressure is occurred here. Okay, so here we are already known that the right auricle, left auricle, right